We are your whistleblowing shrinks, Dr. Teralyn and therapist Jenn. Everyone, this is the Gaslit Truth Podcast. Before we introduce our guest for today, we want to give you a quick shout out to our newest brand partner, which is Orgain Organic Protein Powder. We use this every single day. It's an easy way to add 21 grams of protein. You put it in your smoothies, your coffee, your post-workouts. As you guys know, if you listen to us, protein provides those amino acids. That is the building block your body needs to make neurotransmitters. So this is about healthy brain function. So guys, to support the show, check it out yourself. Visit the link in our YouTube description.
Once a cheater, always a cheater. Dr. Kathy Nickerson published her own research that might effectively ruin your favorite relationship cliche. Welcome, Dr. Kathy, to the show.
Hi, good morning. Hello.
Hello. First of all, I just have to say, I'm so excited for you to have published your first research article. I think it's your first, right? Yes.
It's probably going to be my only.
Of course, but only.
Right.
The only. But you're such an academic, Kathy. We talked about this, right?
No, it's true. I'm setting the academic world on fire. No, I mean, I'm an accidental researcher, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I was very curious. We did a survey, and then we had so much amazing data. It was like, we've got to publish this because we collected more data than almost anybody had. So we had to. It was an accident, and I will try not to fall into that accident again.
I want to ask, because I remember when you were collecting this data on TikTok, like you were on social media collecting the data. And what were you expecting to do with the data, if not research, publish? If you're like, I don't know.
Honestly, people kept saying things to me, right? And saying things like, once a cheater, always a cheater. I was like, I know this is not true, and I need to prove it to the folks in the comment section. I need to have the data to prove this. And there is a lot of research on infidelity. But I thought, on social media, we had this opportunity to access so many people who were, very interested in the topic. So honestly, when we started, I just wanted to get answers to the questions that I had, that, people in the comment sections had. And so I was very lucky to recruit some friends and colleagues to help me do this. And we ended up with one of the biggest infidelity, studies ever done. So that was really cool.
Yes. Okay, we got to dive into
special guest. Didn't you have a special guest that decided to enter the chat with you on the research?
Oh yes, we were extremely, extremely lucky to have Dr. John Gottman join us with this research project. So I was
John. Isn't it just so cool, Gottman. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. This is the coolest thing. Yes. And I know, because I remember when you wrote your book, your workbook that you have. What was that called? The Courage to Stay.
Courage to Stay.
The Courage to Stay.
Right behind your melon, everybody. If you're on YouTube, look at the book is up there right behind her.
It is.
Displayed for everyone.
Subtle. Very
subtle.
Yeah.
No one would ever know.
Jenn and I have recommended this book a lot in our practice clients. For you. Yeah, it's been really great. It's a wonderful book. Yes.
Thank you.
And I remember you wanted him to like put a little blurb in the book for you. This was years ago when you did this.
Yeah.
And so I was so excited to hear that he finally joined you. So yay.
Yes. Oh,
yay, congratulations. Yes.
Thank you so much.
So let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. So there's a lot of gaslit truth around affairs, right? Totally. So what are some of the biggest things that you have seen or heard that you really wanted to debunk outside once a cheater, always a cheater?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So once a cheater, always a cheater is the biggest one.
Yeah.
The second one is that, cheaters feel absolutely no regret and remorse until they're caught. A big one is most cheaters are narcissists, and they'll, never change. So that goes along with the first one.
Narcissists. Yes.
I can't.
Carry on. Everybody's a narcissist now.
Everyone's a narcissist. Yep.
Then, plenty of other things like, they don't actually love you. Like, this is a really confusing one for people, that someone can cheat and also have love for you. Now, I will say that cheating is absolutely not a loving behavior. It is a really poor choice and poor coping strategy. But people are capable of holding complex emotions at the same time and
What?
multiple feel. I know it's weird. But a lot of people are telling me it's impossible to cheat if you love someone. It's like, no, it's not. And then
Mhm.
it's impossible to recover. Like, so many people believe that there is just no coming back from this. And there absolutely is. In fact, most people do. So I really want to change the narrative around this, because I want people to have holidays together with their kids, right? I
Mhm.
want people to stay together and find a healthy way to rebuild a new, better relationship on the other side of this.
Why would I wanna stay together with somebody who's cheated on me?
Because such a good question. It's like you're a psychologist. Um, because
Don't feed her ego this morning. She's just been on it all.
I started off by saying I have a big head literally and figuratively today, so anyway.
She did. This.
we
I'm like,
needed
yep,
room for your big brain.
yep.
And,
I didn't disagree on either. I was like,
si- yeah. Since you've been in that movie, Teralyn, I
Uh,
mean, there's no controlling
Jeez.
you.
I know, right? Whip me
No,
into
I
shape
mean,
here.
we will. I think Jen and I will take care of you. Um, no, I mean, the truth really is that affairs are a big giant painkiller, right? Just like drinking, just like using drugs, just like working too much. And people keep doing what works for them, and if they've never learned any other way of being or coping or dealing with their feelings, they keep doing what works. But if we can help them understand why they're doing what they're doing and give them tools to deal with their feelings in a healthier way, they don't need to keep repeating the unhealthy behavior. So all of us are capable of changing at any point and evolving into the next better version of ourselves. That's why you stay.
It's a painkiller for the person with the behavior,
Mhm.
but what is it for the person on the receiving end of that?
It would be a pain inducer. It is a like, being at the epicenter of a nuclear bomb. It is one of the worst things that you can go through, because everything you think you know gets destroyed in an instant.
Mhm.
Who your partner is to you, right? The safety of your life gets destroyed. All of your memories, right? Like, oh my gosh. So that means when we were at your 40th birthday party, you weren't actually feeling this for me. And I thought we had such a special moment and we didn't. It really, it destroys a lot. And a lot of your identity, right? Because who you are sometimes is connected to, you know, your place in the world and your partner and your relationships. And all of that disintegrates in a moment. It's really, really horrific.
When I have clients, in office that have struggled with the affair stuff, right? So, there's a lot of resistance for the person who's been hurt, the hurt partner,
Mhm.
to deal with their traumatic experience of that pain. There's resistance there, I think because, like, it's like, "You did it. Why am I the one now in the therapist chair, having to resolve this for myself in order to move on?" That seems like a lot of work for me to have to do to stay here. What do you say to people that are the hurt partners that have to do that type of work?
Yeah. Oh, that feeling is so understandable, right? You didn't ask for this. This is very unfair. This is very painful, and I think it's completely reasonable to question: Do I actually want to stay and deal with this? Because if you did that before, you could do it again, and I don't want to go through this more than once. So, right, it's not fair that someone inflicted trauma on you. Just like it's not fair if somebody crashes their car into you and you experience a physical trauma, like breaking your leg, right?
Mhm.
Life is full of unfair stuff that happens to us. And I wish it would never be that way, but it is. And so it's our responsibility to heal from the trauma that happens to us. And truthfully, the the roots of the affair the affair behavior start in childhood, I think. So
Mhm.
something happens for the most part to the person who strays. They got some unfair trauma, and then that unfair trauma ends up oozing onto you. Very unfair. I don't like it. I wish it never happened. But if we heal from the trauma and we find a way to stay together in a way that feels good and authentic to both people, like, I don't want people to stay just to say, hey, we're still married 75 years. We hate each other, but we're still married. If
Right.
you find a way to heal together, you can stop, be the kind of cycle breaker for that intergenerational trauma.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I think about, again, I'm going back to the hurt party, like some of the
Yeah.
resistance to healing that I hear is, well, basically like if I let go of my pain, then you're not held accountable anymore. Like as if your
Yes.
pain is the accountability factor, like the one thing that's going to keep them in line from here forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm
or I
That's,
think about like approving the behavior, right? Like then I just gave approval for that
yeah,
behavior.
if I give up on my pain, then now
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with what
Mhm.
happened.
Which
Mhm.
acceptance and approval are two very different spaces to be in. So that's kind of
Mhm.
one of those pieces, right? You're talking about
yes.
mental health, Kathy. I want to ask a question, and
Yeah.
if you know if it makes sense, if I'm talking about anything that you had in your research, you can transition into that or not. But I'm just kind of curious
Sure.
to know. So you're talking about trauma a lot here, and you're talking about people who go
Yes.
through traumas and how those traumas can impact them right throughout their life, later in life. Okay. So I think about, because obviously, like if we put a mental health diagnosis on this, because people love these damn labels, right? They're like, no matter how much Terry and I say, like, we don't give a shit about the labels, right? People are still
Mhm.
like, well, the
Mhm.
label's the label, and
Right.
this helps me
Right.
come to truth with things. Okay, whatever. So whether we had labels of like post-traumatic stress disorder, okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
somewhere in our lives, or we've been labeled with generalized anxiety disorder or obsessive
Mhm.
compulsive disorder or major depression or, blah, 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 the list goes on. I'm curious to know what you see on your end of people using mental health disorders as like the excuse, so to say, for either why somebody has cheated on them or there's been an affair, or
Mhm.
the flip side of they themselves have mental health issues that they're dealing with, and it has led
Mhm.
them to see their partner in a very different way,
Mm.
and maybe led to cheating on that way, right? Like I have major
Yeah.
depression. I've had it for 10 years. Well, it's no wonder you've been cheating on me because you're so disconnected from
Oh.
yourself and from me in the first place. Like, how
Mhm.
does mental health interweave in the discussions about this? I know it's a really
Mhm.
loaded
Mhm.
question, but
It was a
No,
long question,
it's
Jen.
because I had to work my way to the question.
Yeah.
Okay, I wrote on my
yes.
piece. Here's what I wrote on my paper: mental health disorders and marriages falling apart. There, how's that?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think no, I appreciate the question. It's a super smart and insightful question. So
Thank you for the validation.
most yeah, I try. That is my default. I always start with validation.
I
I
know
I
preach
know
this.
she does
she's
Every
every
minute.
validating a
time, every
shitty
time.
long question right now. She's validating it. Thank you,
Well,
Kathy.
I very much enjoy long, nebulous questions that eventually get at a
How I
completely
process. I
different
know
thing than what you
it's
started with.
so
These are
I
annoying.
my
can't.
favorite with my clients. Like we can start talking about affairs and end up with salmon, right? So I don't know.
Oh my God.
Um,
That's
really,
It's
I
getting
bring
hysterical.
hot
fish into
today.
almost every conversation. I've got to figure out why. There's some deep
Let's
psychological thing
talk
there.
later about that, Kathy. Just kidding.
Yeah, we will. We will. We'll
Anyway,
do a deep dive into my own trauma. Um,
about fish.
yeah, there must be something, right?
It's got to be
I don't
something.
know. Maybe I fell in a vat of pickled herring as a kid. I don't know. I
Oh
don't know.
no.
I'm
I've
going to write
blocked it
this down
out.
right now so I don't forget later. Anyway, go
Please,
ahead.
please.
Yes.
Anyways, no, where I see that cropping up the most is in the betrayed partner. So
Okay.
the betrayed partner will often feel like I am complicated. I am too much. I
Mm.
am a problem. And that's why they had to cheat. So there's a lot of self blame connected to the mental health disorder or difficulty, right? Like, who among us has not had a mental health difficulty at one point or another?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Most, um, most betrayed partners have a version of anxious attachment. So they're often a little bit more anxious and worried. And so they are more likely to blame themselves for things. Most straying partners And it's like about 78%. Most straying partners have avoidant attachment. So they avoid labeling themselves, avoid dealing with their mental health
Yeah.
stuff. And they just say, you know what, this is how I am. This is how the world is. It's fine. I'm going to do what I need to do. So there isn't often a lot of insight in the straying partner. But there is a lot of self blame typically in the betrayed partner. So I hope
That's
that
probably why
answers.
there's self-blame, because the strayed partner isn't in tune enough to be like, this is why. And so the betrayed partner is always looking for why. And the answer to why
Yes.
is it's me. That's why. That's
Mhm.
got to be why, because you're not
I'm
giving me
defective.
anything else. Yeah. I'm defective in some way, whether it's because I'm a lot, or I've been told throughout my childhood that I'm a lot to
Uh-huh.
handle, or,
Mhm.
I'm not pretty enough, or my boobs
Mhm.
aren't big enough, or I'm not
Mhm.
sexy enough, or
Mhm.
because the other
All of
partner
those.
isn't giving them any information, maybe because they don't understand why. And the
Right.
betrayed partner is looking for why. Like,
Yeah.
why? Why
Mhm.
did this happen? So, yeah,
Um,
that self-assessment of it's gotta be my fault. So I'm gonna make it up to be my fault because I'm not getting
Well,
anything else
that's
because of my
you
avoidant
can
partner.
find solution then. When it's your fault, it's easier to find
Oh, yeah.
solution, right?
I can
Like
get
you
a
can
boob
work that
job.
yeah.
narrative. You get
Mhm.
work that narrative
Yeah.
in your
Right.
brain. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
No,
Right.
that was I you did answer the question because I
Okay,
have a
Okay.
good
feeling
answer.
that like mental health like issues or disorders or these labels on either party and how they're put somehow
Mhm.
interweave themselves into whether it's like the self-blame part of things or well this is just how I am because I'm biologically, screwed because I have these
Mhm.
mental health disorders. So like
Mhm.
there is no other solution. And I can see how that can move itself into these discussions when
Yeah.
they're happening, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And
Which
we're
by the
all
way which
yeah.
which by the way, if the hurt partner is blaming themselves and then they're going
Mhm.
to therapy and the therapist is saying we've got some trauma to work through, then it's almost validating that it is something within you that happened. Um, like the
Yeah.
message can come out that, do you follow what I'm saying? Like,
I
Yes, yes,
do
yes.
even though
follow.
we're saying
Yeah.
like the trauma of this is something that you need to sort through if you're going to stay together, but really that interpretation can be, it is my fault.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
have to be so clear with betrayed partners
Mhm.
that it is not your fault. You did not do anything to cause this to happen, no matter what you did, right? Even if you were too much, even if you were depressed, even if you were struggling with grief and caregiving for your family and anxious and you ignored them and you didn't have sex enough and you've gained weight, no matter what, you are not responsible for somebody else's choices and behavior, right?
Right.
You may
Right.
have played a role in making the relationship complicated, right? And again, what relationship is not complicated? So you may have played a role in that, but that doesn't give your partner a license to go out and cheat. They had a million other ways they could have dealt with this. That choice to do that is on them. So you and your mental health and your trauma and whatever ways you're different, because we're all different in some different ways,
Mhm.
um, that doesn't give anyone permission to go out and do something that's destructive and hurtful and quite maladaptive.
Right.
Right.
Right. There's something in here that you reported on the key insights of,
Okay.
this, yes. So, and this is a word I want you to define to our audience, please.
I'm ready.
Women women reported experiencing more limerence during the
Mm.
affair than men. So first of all, I want an explanation of what limerence is, because I hear it all the time, right? And I don't know
Mhm.
that everyone knows what it means. And
Mhm.
then we're going to discuss that question. So, what is
Yeah.
limerence? Yeah.
Limerence is sort of this fantasy that you project onto somebody else and this feeling of intense love and obsession that's not really, kind of backed up by reality, right?
Mhm.
So if you've ever been in this deep, kind of emotional moment with a celebrity that you've never met and have no connection to and have no, personal knowledge of,
Got
you're
it.
probably having a moment of limerence, right?
Sure.
Sean
Like,
Connery.
ooh,
Limerence all day for Sean. Mhm.
oh my gosh.
No, it
That's
reminds
a
me of Michael
beautiful choice.
Jackson. It reminds me of Michael Jackson and the lady who said that Michael Jackson was her lover, right? Billie Jean. It's not my lover.
Yeah.
She says,
Yeah.
Billie Jean.
No, I mean,
Limerence,
just
Billie Jean.
think about who you were obsessed with when you were 13, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Rick Springfield, I'm slightly ashamed to
There you
admit.
go. Okay.
Jesse's girl. Who doesn't love Jesse's
Oh my
girl?
God.
I don't
Okay,
know.
so
I mean,
there's this like fantasy almost that you're saying that we
Totally.
are projecting onto somebody else, right? And we are in that space. So in those moments, are you saying that emotions are they're not factual? Feelings are not facts right there when you're in that world.
Right.
I mean, it might
Totally.
seem real, but it's not really factual. Like what you're experiencing isn't quite reality.
Right. Well, so interestingly enough, women were more likely to experience this than men.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with another finding, which is that most women wait longer. They're in more emotional distress when they do have an affair. So they're dying for emotional connection and feelings and validation. And then they, connect with someone who starts paying attention to them, and they suddenly get the compliments, the kindness, the listening, the validation, the support, all this. And then a big wave of, attachment starts to develop. And so they fall a little bit more into this kind of limerence state in a bigger way than a lot of them, the men tend to. And I think this is connected to men, for the most part, being encouraged to suppress a lot of their feelings. And so maybe they're, and this is something I probably need to explore further. God help me if I do another research study.
Here we go.
But
writing it down. Research study number 2 for
no,
Kathy is being born right now.
Please don't write it down. Throw that out right now.
I'm manifesting it for you. I'm not going to write it down. I'm just going to manifest it for you.
But I think they are. Yeah, I think they are more emotionally reserved just because of the way society has encouraged them to behave.
Mm-hmm. So limerence. Do you think that's why, like, at least for women, because they experience limerence more frequently? What did you say? Oh, it just says more than. So I don't know what the more than means in that. But when you go and let's say the marriage ends, right, and you decide to stay with that partner, the affair partner, what are the percentages that relationship actually works, or do you know the percentage of
terrible? Yes,
terrible.
Yes,
yeah. Do you think that's because of the limerence part, perhaps? Like suddenly it's real life.
Yeah. Okay, so the vast majority of people who have affairs do not leave to be with their affair partner. It's about 88% of people stay with their original partner. So about 12%, right, go off to be with their affair partner. Only 2% of those relationships turn into long-term relationships. So the statistics on a affair turning into a long-term relationship are terrible. And I think it's because of limerence. But I also think like there's a lot of, complicated feelings associated with having an affair, right? Someone knows that they kind of did their partner a disservice by doing this. So there's guilt and shame connected to the relationship. And then anytime you talk about how the two of you met, it's complicated and messy. And if there's kids who stay with your original partner and you've run off with your affair partner, guess how those kids feel about your affair partner? They do not really care for them. So that's a complicating factor. Does it every once in a while work out? Yes, it does. But it's very rare. And I would tell anybody who's in an affair thinking, oh, this is my true love, probably not. And
probably not.
Okay, so that was going to be my question: is if you recognize that, or you're mindful enough that you might be in this state of limerence, right? I've never heard of this word before, so I am going to like all the time now.
I hear it all the time.
Never saw it before what you put out, but this is also not something I do a lot of reading on. Okay,
it's okay.
However, okay,
in our world, it would be spellbound, Jen.
Right.
Think about being spellbound.
That's exactly. Yep. Yes. There we go.
Okay.
That's
actually a better word.
Is it?
You're kind of under a spell of this other person that isn't reality.
Right.
I might start using that. Okay.
You can.
Go ahead.
I don't think
Let's
Peter has
switch.
copyrighted that one. I don't know. He might have. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
No, but I
Let
like.
me know. Let me know.
I like. Okay, so I have awareness now. Like I have awareness of the fact that this is happening. Is there solution to try to step out of that space of limerence so that you can actually try to view and get back to viewing your marriage and your reality and your relationship in the way that it actually is, if people are not ready to leave, right? Like 88%, right, is what you said, of people actually don't leave.
88.
So
That's a high. I think that number alone, most people don't realize is that high. Like that's a high percentage.
Yeah. So here you are, you recognize it, and I'm going, okay, yep, I got the limerence. I'm in this spellbinding world. I need to stop. How do people step out of that to try to return back to a space of normalcy, to like view the world as it is again? Like, how do I stop being in love with Sean Connery?
How do you convince someone that they're not in limerence anymore? Like,
what do you do?
It's really hard, right? So when this most often comes to light is when the affair is discovered, right? And so the betrayed says to the straying partner, okay, I Sean, sorry, Sean, we love you.
No, it's good.
But I know about Sean Connery, and this needs to stop right now. Otherwise, you need to move out. Okay, so then the affair, ends then, but the feelings don't end, right? They're still in this, we often call it a fog, right?
Yearning.
Yeah, very like they might be thinking lots of magical stuff. This is my true love. We are, twin flames. I don't really know what this means, but people say this to me.
Flames.
I've heard that.
They very much feel like there's a magical connection there. And that is limerence, right? It's a lot of projection. So what you say to somebody is, I totally understand that you feel this way, right? We validate first. Totally understand that you feel this way. And more often than not, this is not really how you're going to feel as time goes on, because you're seeing things in a very muddy way right now. So I would encourage them to stop all contact with the affair partner. Yes, that's going to hurt. And I'm sorry, but this is the path we need to go down. So stop. And then stop fantasizing about the affair partner. Stop thinking about all the beauty and the fun moments and all the good stuff, right? If there's anything negative about the affair partner that you can come up with, that's very helpful. Like, oh, yeah, it turns out they were dealing drugs to children on school buses. That wasn't great. Whatever.
So there's a lot of neuroscience here behind this. I mean, you are talking about taking really strong neural connections and dissipating them. This is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Trying to basically break the connection to the affair partner and reestablish the connection to your primary partner. So remind yourself what's good with your partner and the good moments you have. Now, it's hard in that moment, right? Because your primary partner is so horrified by you and so distraught, and it's a very, very painful and messy time. So it can be really hard to try to do this while, dealing with the trauma that you've caused. And that's why it's very important that someone gets, some individual support. Actually, both partners get individual support initially to help them navigate. Because the person who strayed is barely able to give you the emotional support you as the betrayed partner need to heal. They can barely take care of themselves and deal with all the stuff that they're going through. They should try, but it's a big struggle in that moment.
Well, right. And they have their own traumas. Like, would you want that support? Like if I don't even know if I would want that support and be able to actually trust and accept that support from my partner who did that.
Yeah. Well, the trust part, you just mentioned the trust part. Yes. And I think about too, like, emotions are so complicated and nobody wants to believe that they're this complicated. When you are the partner who strayed and you're asked to cut off everything from someone that you think you're in love with, you're grieving the loss of that relationship. At the same time, you're watching the partner that you cheated on be suffering so badly, and the guilt and shame in that space the grief and loss over here, it's freaking complicated. It's
Very, very
complex. And
messy.
nobody wants to believe that there's going to be grief there in leaving this other partner, but there is, because of the emotional complexity that's created out of this trifecta mess, if you will, that's been created.
Absolutely.
It's a lot.
Okay, so
It's a lot.
3,429 individuals were in this study, right?
That's crazy.
I know the sample
that
size
is a lot of people.
There's actually more.
Oh, there's more.
Sure. Yeah. We actually.
Did you say cat's
I did
ass?
say cat's ass.
That
is such a cat's ass sample size, right? Coming from us who are looking at doing some research here on our end, Terry, and
we're hoping for 200
people. And I look at Kathy's, I'm like, damn.
Well, that
people want a voice. People want a voice.
Yeah. Well, and I think people want to understand why they're doing what they're doing and what they're feeling. So I totally encourage you guys to do the research. Don't be discouraged by my naysaying this.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Because it's so interesting, the stuff that you find. But it's a very, very messy situation. And you were asking, would I even want that validation and support? Yes, they totally want it, because they're in this the betrayed partner is in this horrible spot of, I hate you and I love you, right? It's, I still want to know that you love me and you feel terrible about what you've done. And I'm so angry and devastated and hurt and rageful at what you did that I want to basically be venting all my pain to you. And I want you to keep coming and reassuring me. And that's hard for both partners, right? Because it's very hard to keep hugging a cactus, but we need to do this.
Oh, that's a good one. Can you talk about this a little? Tell us a little bit about this research that you did. Give us the fifth grade version over under.
Sure. No, it was, so in 2023, some colleagues and I put out these big surveys online, and we asked 107 questions. We like to be,
that is a lot of questions for that many people to answer,
and
by
yet
the way.
they did it.
No.
And yet they did it. Exactly.
And there was free response, write as much as you want. There was also, we didn't induce them in any way. We didn't give them any money, no Amazon gift cards. It's just come tell us about your experience. And they were so happy. Are happy to do it. And we were so happy to receive it. So we actually ended up surveying over 5,000 people, but we only had complete answers from 3,429. So we used that, which was great.
Only. Yeah, only.
No,
Yep.
we're so lucky. And in all honesty, even though I talk in silly ways about the research, I am so happy and joyful and honored to be able to gather this data and bring it forward, because it does disprove almost everything people think they know about affairs. Everything people think they know about affairs is really wrong. Okay, so what we found high level by talking to both the betrayed people and the straying people is that most straying partners end the affair. Most affairs are short-lived. They're not years and years going on. They're usually 6 months or less. Most people remain with their original partner. And most people who cheated really regretted the affair and were feeling regret during it, even though they were feeling excitement at the same time. And most only had one affair. So that saying, once a cheater, always a cheater, it's not true, right? It's, in our research, it was about 60% of people that had one affair. So that's the majority. And I wish it was a higher number. But when we asked people, did you have 2 affairs, 3 affairs, 4 affairs, how many? 78% of people had 2 or less affairs, with the majority being 60% had 1. So, I don't love this, right? I would love that number to be 99% had 1 affair and then they stopped.
How did you define affair, Kathy?
We let them define it. So we didn't tell them what an affair was.
Okay. So it could be a combination of emotional or physical or both.
We did ask them that, right?
Oh, you did.
We did say, was it physical? Was it emotional? It was both for the majority, but we didn't say we didn't define exactly what an emotional affair was, and we didn't define
Sure.
exactly what a physical affair was, because some people would say it was sex only, but what
Mhm.
about other activities?
I did not have sex with that
Oh
woman.
boy,
Do
yeah.
you remember?
Yes. Oh yes, I do. Yes.
Smoking
Do you
a
have a
cigar.
cigar?
That's the
Who's
only thing
got
I
one?
did. But
Who's got a
anyway.
Cuban? I don't know.
Gosh. And in some
Nobody in
ways,
my
that
house.
seems like
Sorry.
such an innocent time.
Right.
That could take us down a whole different path.
Okay, so it
Sorry.
wasn't defined out emotional versus physical, but that was a question that you
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
ask the participants that were in this study. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we what I thought was really helpful was that people who had cheated strongly endorsed the idea that they still loved their partner. They weren't interested in replacing their partner, that the affair was a painkiller for them, and that they only came to recognize this after the affair, which is why affairs can be a positive thing ultimately. It's never going to be a good thing. I'm never saying it's okay or right or a good choice, but it causes people to look at their behavior and their coping and their thoughts and their feelings in a new and different way, and then evolve. And that new evolved person is capable of having a much richer relationship with their partner than they did before.
Yes.
It's almost like something major has to happen in order for you to take a hard left turn.
Yeah,
And that's unfortunate in some respects that it has
totally.
to cause so much pain as well. But I wonder if the same holds true to the person who was, the hurt
Mm.
party, right? Does it make does it cause them to have more depth and look at things differently too?
For sure, right? Like, it's a heck of a way to get there.
Mm,
But I think every trauma that we go through gives us more compassion and increases our ability to love other people, including our partner, maybe even including ourselves. So, yeah, every time we go through a trauma, we break apart, right? And in the process of
mhm.
putting ourselves back together, I think we get a little bigger. Maybe we get a little stronger. We get a little bit um, more understanding for others.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me, having worked with a lot of couples too, like, when they're in the throes of an affair, whether it's emotional or physical, we say you have to end that relationship has to end if you plan on working in this relationship.
Mm.
Can you talk to why? I mean, this seems obvious, but why is that important to end this? Like, why is it important that you can't have both feet, one foot over here and one foot over here, when you go to a couples therapist to try to sort this out?
Right. So it'd be like trying to patch, a hole in a boat while you're digging another hole. It's like, what is the point of that, right? You have
Mhm.
established this emotional connection to your affair partner, and you're pouring out emotion there. That emotion needs to be stopped and redirected to your primary partner. So, yeah, you can't, like, a great question that I am asked every once in a while is, can't I just keep my girlfriend and see how that
Yes.
goes? Well, I rebuild my
Yep.
relationship with my wife. And like, if,
Well, I see if this is gonna work out
Yes,
yeah,
over
I
here
know.
too.
I
like,
always
I
say to
would
my clients, like,
love for
"You
that to
think that?
work.
Yeah, you think you
Yeah,
can have your cake and eat it too? Like, what planet are you living on right now?
right,
Like,
right.
if you gonna
Bless
send
your
your
heart.
yeah, like,
No.
you're gonna send your resources somewhere, you have to send all of them somewhere. All of them,
Yeah,
right? It
I
does
like
need to
that.
be an all or
I do
nothing
too.
thing in this kind of a
Yeah.
situation, right? Especially if
Yeah.
you want to try to make it work. It's
Yeah.
just essential.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of discussion about, like, or is there research based within the idea of, well, primitively, biologically,
Hmm.
we are not meant to be
Mm.
monogamous, right? My forefathers and forefathers before that and the cavemen before that were not monogamous, right? So it is in my biological DNA that this is going to be really, I can't do this. Do you ever get any of that?
I don't get very much of that. But if somebody said
Okay.
that to me, I would say, I would say
I understand where you're coming
Yes.
from. Validate first, right?
probably.
Validate.
But then I would say, how do you know that? Like, how do you know that's in your DNA? Like,
Sure.
show me the research.
Show me that.
Show me the
Show me the
genetic
receipts.
code.
That's exactly what
Yeah.
I said to the last person who said this to me.
Yeah. And then I would ultimately come to a place of, well, okay, are you telling me that you don't feel you're capable of this? Is that the choice that you want to make? If that's the
Right.
choice you want to make, that's fine. But you need to be open and honest about that at the beginning. It's not okay to say, yes, I'm going to be monogamous with you and we're going to, create this life together and you're going to base all of your life choices on me. But I'm going to also break that deal whenever I feel like it because it's in my, genes apparently. So no.
Right. Well, and we're also talking about the concept of an affair. We're talking about like a moral stance for someone, right? Okay. So if we bring morality into this too, right? I also think about what is considered right and wrong within something. And that is going to be a very subjective space, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's
morality is tricky. Morality is tricky.
That's why I wrote morality on my sheet. Because to me, this funnels into this conversation, right? Like, I don't know if you hear this from clients or if you've dealt with this, but like,
totally,
this is a concept of morality. Yeah. Okay. What do you think about that?
I love this question because so people often say to me, well, you just have no morals, you have no integrity, and you have a big giant character flaw. It's like, okay, well, whoa with the judgment. Like, all of us are messy. We must recognize this. But the truth is that morality gets pushed aside when we're in enough pain. And several researchers have studied this. So, what I would tell you is all of us have our moral principles, right? And there's what we think we would do in a given situation. And when we are in enough distress or pain, we will push those aside because we are very good as humans at sort of focusing on the immediate reward we're going to get and suppressing the consequences. We also are good at rationalizing things for ourselves and creating narratives that reduce our guilt, right? So, like, you know what? Here's one that I heard not that long ago. My wife has cancer. She's going through cancer treatment right now. And, she's doing chemo and all of that. Like, I can't ask her to pay attention to me. So it's actually a good thing for me to go to these massage parlors because then I get what I need. Nobody gets hurt. I know. But they're thinking this honestly at the time. And that's when we
It's a primitive need. It's a primitive need I have. Right?
Oh my God.
I know.
Yes.
My wife is on her death's door dealing with cancer, but it's my primitive needs. Okay, I can't anyway.
Yeah,
all right, go ahead.
But they
this
honestly,
is the irrationality.
Here's the morality, right?
Yeah.
This is where this comes in. Yes.
Yeah, and so they're like, I'm in pain. I don't want to be a burden. They're also usually avoidant of talking about their feelings, right? So they don't share this, and maybe they've lived their life with a lot of compartmentalization, right? Where they say, the real me does all these great good things for my family, but then there's a little bit of my dark passenger, borrowing from Dexter. I love that description, where I do some of these problematic things, and it's okay as long as it stays in the basement, because most of the time I live in the main house, but every once in a while I need to go down to the dark basement and do my stuff. And then, as pain progresses, people really do discard their own morality for pain relief.
This is I really glad that you are talking about this. Like, I think of all the things that shut down the emotion center, right, of somebody's brain, right? Whether there's a trauma that exists in their history, I don't know whether there's a TBI that's in their history, whether there's different medications that they're taking that impact that actual area of the brain. When you're thinking about this, when you are that disconnected from an emotional space, you can then go ahead, pain, and whatever you define that is, takes over, puts morality in the basement, and you go to town without actually being able to have a higher order thinking of being able to perceive all of those consequential things, including like a moral high ground that you do stand on, that you've, stood on forever. It just kind of fades that away. And so then your decision making, how you view it, Before you know it, you're at a parlor getting a massage.
Right. The special
A
massages.
happy ending, if you
Right.
will.
So this is actually very
Yep.
fascinating to me from that
It's
area of the
super
brain
interesting.
standpoint and where we process emotion. And if those centers are in any way, shape, or form not running
Impacted.
organically,
Compromised.
yeah, if they're
Mhm.
compromised,
Yeah.
it can
Right.
lead to
Mhm.
thinking and viewing things in a way you never would. It could lead you to shutting down your emotions and the avoidant things that can happen, right? And you just don't sit in that space to actually be able to feel and view and think through the consequences. Not an excuse, but a reality. Like is what
Nope.
I'm.
I want to add this in too, because there's so many people out there that say, I would never have an affair because of the moral compass conversation that we're having about I would never. And what we're saying here is pain, enough pain can override that moral judgment code.
Yeah.
Like in any or every person.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that every person is going to have an affair, but that means
No.
that any person can be subjected to that
Yeah.
and do things as a result of that, live in the basement essentially,
Yeah.
you know. Most of the time you're in the main house, but so when I hear that, like I would never,
No.
right? I would never, then we're in the moral compass,
Yeah.
but we're saying that that's actually not true.
No.
That statement, I would never, is not true.
No.
For biological reasons, you know, or physiological
Yep.
reasons, really.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and you can prove it to yourself, right? So think of the person that you love most in the world, right? Wouldn't you do almost anything to protect them? So if somebody like you might say, like, there is no way I would ever, shoot someone, right? Okay. So if somebody was threatening that person you love the most in the world,
Yes.
you would do some
Whatever you
extreme
gotta do.
behaviors, right?
Yes.
So
That's
it's
right.
kind of like
Because of
that.
the pain override.
It's
Mhm.
like that. So I think all of us have to be real with ourselves and say, we are capable of doing horrible things. And doing a horrible thing doesn't make you a horrible person. Now, if you keep doing it and you don't care about the consequences, well, okay, maybe you're in horrible territory. But if you do, Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. If you
I was actually thinking about all the inmates I used to work with when you just said that
Me
thing.
too.
Just because you do a
Me
horrible
too.
thing doesn't make you a
I
horrible
would
person.
say
I would too.
that.
Yeah.
That's exactly a line I would
say
say.
that.
Yes.
Yes.
To the inmates we
I
work
would
with.
say that. Yes.
I didn't know you both
And I
had
do
that in
mean it
common.
when I say
that
that.
you
Yeah.
both worked in the
Oh,
jails.
yeah, we
That's
met.
how we
We
met.
met in prison.
Really?
That's how we met.
Oh,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
see, some very good relationships come out of prison.
They do. We should have a love after lockup
Yes.
staff episode, kind of
Yeah,
like.
they're
Oh, that
Write a
would be great.
proposal
That would be
to
That would be
cool.
fantastic.
Annie. Let's get this going. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So where were you going with that, Kathy? So yeah, we
Yeah.
keep cutting you off. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just thinking the joys of menopause. Who knows where I was going?
Oh no, this is us.
but-
This is not menopause. This is us just cutting you off.
But no, I think all of us are capable of almost any behavior. And I'd love to tell you that I would never do X, Y, and Z, but I've seen the research and I've seen firsthand, like you can.
Never say never.
And so we were talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. So you are not a horrible person because you did a horrible thing. If you use that horrible moment to grow and change and evolve, you're not that, right? You're rejecting that. So don't get stuck in the mud and say, I've ruined my life. I'll forever be a cheater. I'm forever a terrible person. There's no way I can be redeemed. Push back on that and instead keep growing, because all of us have growth we need to do, right? All of us have behavior that is problematic. All of us could be labeled if we're going to label people based on their worst moments. So I reject that who we are is who we are in our worst moments.
I like that. And so whenever I hear that again moving forward, I'm just going to print off your research and throw it at them. Like, here you go. This disproves once a cheater, always a cheater.
Yes.
By research.
Yes. And the other research studies have done that too. So people lately have been coming out of the woodwork to say, but Kathy, you only talk to people who are interested in reconciliation. That's probably like 2% of the population. Everybody else breaks up after an affair. That's not true.
Right.
That when we look at general population
88%.
studies, even when we look at general population studies, it's not quite as high as we found, but we find that people reconcile after an affair. So there's this myth that an affair ends relationships, and that's really not true.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a guy on TikTok that came after you.
He's a spicy cat.
Aw,
Yes.
we have to give him a shout out. Who is he?
Yeah.
We need a shout out on an international podcast. Spicy.
It's okay.
Spicy me on.
Yes.
Well, to me, the funny part is that like he's like, you only asked these certain people in these groups. I'm like, yeah, that's because that's the information you wanted to get. Like,
Right.
of course, like you're going to ask that.
Right.
And I think it's funny because even as Jen and I are starting to go into our research thing, so many people have ideas of what the research should be, who we should be asking, what we should be doing. And I'm like, listen, like in order to get a research study published, it has to be narrow. And that's exactly what you went after is a narrow population.
Yeah.
Which yielded really interesting results.
Yeah.
So I would suggest everybody look at her research and also your book, The Courage to Stay.
Yes. Tell us about your book. Who should read your book?
Yes. I love my book only because it's so
I do too.
positive. And I just see it as such a comforting thing. So The Courage to Stay, my original book, is for both people it's involved in an affair. So it's for the betrayed partner and the straying partner. And it's really my roadmap for how to heal from an affair. Now, I will let you know a secret that I'm going to revise it probably next year because I've learned so much in the 5 years since I wrote it and make it even better. But I still think it basically helps people have an understanding that the affair was about pain. It wasn't about you being a defective partner. It wasn't about you somehow having this crappy marriage. This is a symptom of pain and problematic coping. So if you want to feel better about healing from an affair, give my book a
It's kind of a workbook type thing, isn't it? It's like more of a
So I have
like there's
two.
activities in there to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
the book is more of a narrative, but there's definitely some reflection questions. And then the second book is a workbook for betrayed partners to explore the deeper feelings of, just hurt and rage and intrusive thoughts. So there's both options.
I love it.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I love your book.
Yeah,
We've recommended it multiple times.
thank you.
Yep.
We have.
I've recommended you multiple times. Like follow her on TikTok, listen to her stuff. Yeah,
Make
it's
sure
all
you guys
really good
check out
stuff.
Courage to Stay. Also, the research that she had just done is the should I stay or should I go after infidelity, which of course I read that first line and I was like, what a great should I stay or should I go? Is that what that song is about?
Should I go?
I don't know. I mean, I gotta look it up. But
let's say yes.
Guys,
let's say yes. Let's say
listen.
yes.
But
Yes.
this is what it's called. Should I stay or should I go? Pathways to relationship preservation after an affair. Okay, amongst individuals. So you guys got to check that out. Make sure you look that up.
Thank you.
And as we wrap up here, Kathy, is there any?
Dr. Kathy is.
Yep.
Hold on. I just want to say, Dr. Kathy is now positioned as one of the greats because this is a lot in with John Gottman. So
Very true.
you made it. You did it.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
No, I am really, really happy to be myth busting about affairs because what I wrote to you guys at 1 a.m. last night is I do this because I want people to be able to stay with their families and their kids and have pancakes on Christmas morning or, latkes during Hanukkah or whatever meal you like during the holiday of your choice.
Yes.
We don't have to
Just so
So neutral.
I try.
Totally inclusive.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I make an effort because I want people to have the joy and happiness that comes from evolving. So that's my spiel.
Perfect.
All right. Well, if you've hung out with us this far, you've been listening to the Gaslit Truth Podcast with our guest, Dr. Kathy Nickerson. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe on all of our platforms, and share with a friend who might need to recover from an affair. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kathy.
Bye.